Nobody wants to talk what's happening to altcoins right now. It seems like this is a good buy the dip opportunity. But is it really? Let's have a look at some data most people aren't considering. For example, this chart. This here is the stablecoin market cap relative to the US money supply. And since October of last year, this is not going up anymore. Over the last 2 months, we even see outflows. So now capital is exiting the system. Why is this important? Let's just have a look at Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is quite correlated to the altcoin market. When money is flowing out of the space, Bitcoin tends to go down. When money is flowing into the space, Bitcoin is going up. No surprise here. What is somewhat surprising though is that just a stall in inflows when there's no more money coming in. Bitcoin and crypto as a whole tends to already decline. And now I think there's a good chance that that decline will accelerate since we've got outflows, not just a sideways movement. What's also surprising that even though this here already looks ugly, that altcoins actually performed relatively well compared to Bitcoin since beginning of the year. Have a look at this here. This is the others market cap relative to the Bitcoin market cap. Others is all the altcoins that are not in the top 10, and so it shows everything that's highly speculative within the crypto space. Now at the beginning of 2022, we had an all-time high in that ratio. In other words, it would have been better to be invested in Bitcoin compared to the smaller altcoins since then. So that's for the last 4.5 years. Now, since the beginning of the year, the altcoins actually did fine. They obviously didn't produce any US dollar gains, but at least they held up relatively well compared to Bitcoin. But this might change very soon. Over the last few days, we already have seen some underperformance, and that could accelerate with the altcoins falling another 40% versus BTC. In other words, there's a very good chance that even if Bitcoin just stays flat, that now the altcoins fall further. And I think this is the most likely scenario given that there's now outflows from the ecosystem. So there's no more inflows through the stablecoin market cap, and stablecoins are used for trading altcoins. There are probably only 2 major use cases for stablecoins. One of them being payments, so transfers across borders, etc. and the other one being speculation with altcoins. If now the stablecoin market cap is going down, that probably means that altcoin speculation will fall as well. Now let's get into the details. If we are bearish, if we think that the altcoins are going down, what kind of altcoins are likely going to go down most? Is it the larger ones? Is it the smaller ones? Let's have a look. This here is a comparison of the smaller altcoins relative to the larger altcoins. So again, the others market cap is all the cryptocurrencies that are not in the top 10. Total 3 ES is the cryptocurrency market cap excluding Bitcoin, Ethereum and the stablecoins. So we are looking at everything below rank 10 versus the entire market excluding BTC and ETH. And over the last 6 years, we tended to trade in a range. The dotted line on that chart, that's the average ratio. So sometimes small altcoins are expensive relative to the rest. Sometimes they are cheap. Currently, we are slightly below the equilibrium. So the small altcoins could outperform the rest of the alts by roughly 6%. But if the momentum prevails, they could outperform by 36%. So in other words, when we flip this around, the larger altcoins seem to be the most vulnerable now. So everything in the top 10. Let's have a look at the top 10. So we exclude Bitcoin, we exclude Ethereum, and we exclude the stablecoins. We've got Tether and USDC in the top 10 as stablecoins. So really, we should be looking at the top 14 because we exclude 4 assets. Let's start off with the bottom and let's have a look at relative valuation charts. So this is now Chainlink, number 14, relative to the rest of the altcoin market. We have seen lower highs since 2020. And the question is, are we also going to see lower lows? I think the answer is probably yes, because even here the support has not really held. I think Chainlink has a very good chance of underperforming the rest of crypto. What about Monero, XMR? That's over here. In the last 1.5 years, we had quite a bit of a run up on the privacy coins. So Monero and Zcash outperformed a lot, and that can be seen in this chart as well. XMR got sold off aggressively when it got delisted by the centralized exchanges. But now all of that selling pressure seems to already have realized. Now Monero can outperform, and I think there is a good chance that over the next years that will continue. Now in the short term there is of course risk. The support is roughly 27% below the current price, but medium term I'm not so convinced that XMR has to underperform the rest of crypto. I think it's one of the few outliers. Zcash of course looks very similar. It's got a similar market cap and its chart is also comparable. The long-term underperformance and then a turnaround in August of last year, so roughly 1 year ago. Just have a look at the listed altcoins on Binance in the last year. Pretty much everything went down, but Zcash was one of the very few outperformers. So still there's a lot of eyeballs on the asset. So I think it's dangerous to bet on a falling Zcash price. In general, why do we make this analysis? It's because the fundamental thesis is that likely crypto is going to go down from here, simply because capital is flowing out. And again, the altcoins are likely going to do worse than Bitcoin. And again, within the altcoin market, the bigger altcoins are likely going to do even worse. In other words, we are now looking for opportunities to potentially bet on falling prices. Now, Monero and Zcash are probably not great candidates to do that. Chainlink might be a better candidate, yet there's always a risk that this resistance will actually not hold and we don't see the big breakout. But in general, this chart of course is not very pretty. And many Chainlink investors are likely wondering, is it really worth it to be exposed to an asset that has all of this development yet still doesn't outperform the rest of crypto? Let's have a look at the Leo token, which was created in the context of the hack of Bitfinex, one of the largest centralized exchanges at the time. Leo just trades like many other altcoins, but the chart very much looks like there is quite a bit of potential downside. We might turn around already in the next few days. Maybe we hit the upper end of the trading range as well, but clearly the downside is much larger compared to the potential upside. I think Leo is very bearish. Let's continue with Dogecoin. Here's Dogecoin relative to the rest of the altcoin market. Within the altcoin market, it tends to decline over the last 5 years, but we are at the lower end of the trading range. Now, there's no guarantee that that trading range will stay and that this support will hold. But definitely, it's quite risky to bet on a falling price of Doge at the moment. But if we do see another short squeeze, maybe a tweet by Elon Musk, maybe something else, and the price goes up, then that could be a nice entry opportunity. But right now, I think it's a bit too risky to bet on falling prices. This might even be a potential buying opportunity. But again, buying now in this market is probably a bad idea given the macro backdrop. What about Hyperliquid? Hyperliquid is one of the very few altcoins that I think can even make US dollar gains in this market. Hyperliquid is riding several waves in crypto. There's a lot of trading now on perpetual futures versus the spot market because the trading fees are lower and because there's more liquidity. There's also the integration with traditional finance, not directly, not via tokenized assets, but via bets on various prices. There's a lot of trading on natural resources like oil or precious metals like gold and silver, or on tech stocks as well, all enabled through Hyperliquid. And since crypto never sleeps and we can trade the asset 24/7, Hyperliquid is filling a real niche within crypto. The Hype token also has an ETF. The Hyperliquid platform is extremely valuable. I use it every single day. And I think this is one of the few altcoins that's worth holding, at least medium term. What about Tron? Tron is a bit dodgy because we're not really sure if all of the assets that are listed on the chain are actually backed one-to-one. A lot of the stable coins in all of DeFi are on Tron, but Tron isn't really used for active trading. Instead, it might be used for payments out of jurisdictions where capital controls are in place. For example, China. Tron is one of the few altcoins that was able to outperform in the last years, yet we are now at the higher end of the trading range, and I'm not so certain if it's still worth it to be in the asset. I think Tron is extremely risky. I think it might make sense to even go against the momentum now and bet on falling prices. It's one of the more risky short positions, but it's definitely a justifiable position. One with high potential return and not so much risk. as in it's an asymmetric bet. What about Solana? Now, I've made several videos on Solana. This is Solana relative to the altcoin market. From cycle to cycle, it tends to outperform. This year was the Memecoin rally. This year was the collapse of Terra Luna and FTX. And since Memecoin trading has stalled, Solana tends to underperform. And I am very bearish on Solana. We're now at the upper end of the trading range. We can very easily even fall below that trading range, fall by more than 50%. I am personally currently betting on a falling price of Solana. But that can of course change in case we break out of this trend. But right now, the trend is the friend. I don't see any reason why Solana should outperform the rest of crypto in the near future. We've got two more left, XRP and BNB. Here is XRP. Despite XRP having such a strong community, the price development isn't that great. And that's maybe because the tokenomics aren't that great and the selling pressure from the organization potentially outpaces any burn mechanisms or staking programs. The risk is very high. XRP could underperform by another 71%. The upside isn't that high. I am bearish on XRP, and I know many people watching this video will disagree, but that's fine with me. Last but not least, the altcoin that gets rarely discussed. Here is BNB relative to the rest of the altcoin market. It's one of the very few altcoins that has been able to outperform over the decades. The risk here is regulatory in nature. Now, BNB is supported by Binance, and Binance continues to push crypto forward. Right? Recently, it launched Asta, for example, a direct competitor to Hyperliquid. The problem is that BNB is now at the upper end of a trading range, and if negative news surrounding Binance surface, the potential downside is quite high. BNB can be a nice altcoin to purchase when the altcoins have fallen more in general, which might get amplified in currently expensive assets. But right now, the risk to reward is not worth it. Could it make sense to short BNB? Potentially, but again, the long-term trend is unfortunately not our friend here. Now, I trade altcoins actively as well. In the last 2 years, I started publishing my trades in real time. I cannot share all the open positions right now. That's available to the premium members. However, if you want to get one of the positions that I currently hold, that many premium members hold as well, then there is this website linked down below. So without any payment, without any credit card, you can get that trade for free, either via Telegram or via email. So simply click on this button to get the trade via Telegram or scan this QR code, or alternatively plug in your email over here. Besides the position, so that trade that I currently hold, you will also get a tutorial video that explains how to do the proper risk management. If it's the first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish this regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. See you next time. Cheers.